Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So you know that weird feeling you get after you've been talking about a particular product or service or searching online for some advice, and then every advert that you see refers to exactly that thing? Well, imagine if you could use that technology to actually do some good. Well, that is exactly what today's guest has done. Today, you're going to meet Pat Berlinquette, a phenomenally talented, multi skilled individual. He's got a brilliant Instagram where he talks about actual conspiracy theories and how this tech is used against you. He's a very accomplished musician and stand up comedian, and he's a really cool guy. And he has been using this technology to make a difference and help people with drug addictions and suicide prevention, and to track UAP. So let's get into it. So I guess a good place to start is mum and dad working for Grumman.
Yeah, so okay, my mom worked for Fairchild, my dad worked for Fairchild, my grandma worked for Fairchild. Uh Pretty much a lot of families during that time frame worked for either Fairchild or Grumman. My mom met my dad at Fairchild
Wow.
and had a lot of family history there. My dad worked on the F-14 and the lunar module, so I have all this
Wow.
paperwork and models and stuff like that. My dad was obsessed with aviation, which I did not absorb that interest in any way. Takes me like, questionable substances and a gin and tonic to even get on a plane. Um, I just can't stand flying in any regard. I flew to Italy
hmm
for the Seoul conference. That took a lot of, therapy and stuff to get on the plane. It was 10 hours, didn't sleep at all, so
Oh
anyway,
man.
my dad loved aviation, loved everything with what went into a plane. What I understand was flying was a lot different back then in the 70s and 80s. It was a
Yeah.
luxurious experience. But he loved everything with flight. So that played into his creation of the F-14, which he
Yeah.
took a lot of pride in. His favorite movie was Top Gun because the planes he worked on were in the movie,
Of
I guess.
course.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't absorb or inherit any of that love. I am interested in it. I'm fascinated by it, but don't like flying like he did, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Not into it.
it's gotta be one of those. Well, okay, so I mean the first thing that they say to Richard Dreyfuss in Close Encounters of the Third Kind is, are you an artist or a painter or anything like that? And your background, the things that you are passionate about, stand up, music, it's very art focused. So I mean, what do you think that's led you to this interest in what you've ended up doing?
Yeah, so my interest is in music and writing, like that's the foundation. And to support myself, I started as a grant writer. So I could back up all the way to the beginning. I went to school for writing.
hmm
I got out of school. I started as a grant writer for a disability services agency. I realized very quickly I was not great at grant writing because there was like little writing involved. It was more about, going out with these wealthy guys on Long Island,
Yeah.
have, watching them golf poorly, have a few Coronas, and then they write big checks. And I was like, where's the writing? Okay, so it wasn't for me. So one of the grants I wrote there was to Google for a grant for our disability services agency, United Cerebral Palsy, and I won $10,000 per month indefinitely for life, which I assume United Cerebral Palsy still has that, which is great. And I got fascinated with the data side of Google Ads. I was fascinated by how the Google Ads system works. So the way it works is if you Google anything, the first results you see are paid advertisements.
hmm
They look differently constantly. Google is changing how they appear, but under sponsored results,
hmm
those results are ads, even though they look like text results. That sounds incredibly mind-numbingly boring until you understand behind the scenes there is a plethora of data being transposed to the ad runner, the marketer, in other words.
hmm
So the person who's running those ads to you can see whether you click the ad or not, or even saw the ad. They could see your age and gender and income, the device you're on, your long and short-term browsing history, your parental status, where you work, the size of your company, zip code, the word for word searches you typed into Google, etc. I was shocked when I could realize you could see this. And fascinated by the data side of it. Working on this stuff and looking at this data did something to my brain where it just kind of locked me into this fascinating thing where everything kind of fell away. And I liked it's like a puzzle or a game you're trying to figure out to squeeze out as many results from that data to drive so-called conversions for the advertiser, your client. Um, Anyway, I left grant writing and I worked for agencies. Marketing agencies are, not to generalize, but are comprised of usually very young people in a room who are managing many advertisers' accounts. So that could be like lawyers and contractors and you name it. Anyone who's running ads, there's rooms full of kids who are running Google Ads accounts. Many cooks in the kitchen, and the accounts and ads are passing off to different people. And that's how it was then in the Wild West days of Google Ads. Marketing agencies don't know what it's like now. I've been in that out of that game for a long time.
Hmm.
Anyway, I worked at marketing agencies, decided to start my own company freelance when I was 28 years old. So that's 12 years ago. Started that and I did that for several years. Then something really big shifted in my worldview in 2019. Two things happened at the same time. I read this book by Seth Stevens, the video. It's called Everybody Lies, this book on big data. And there's like one page in that whole book where he talks about using Google Ads in unconventional ways and buying all these weird keywords that no advertiser would ever in their right mind buy that, to put crassly, you can't monetize, you can't make money off of. And I wanted the whole book to be about that. I thought that
Hmm.
was fascinating. And then I read about this guy, Kevin Hines, who in the year 2000 took a bus to the Golden Gate Bridge and it jumped off the bridge to attempt suicide. And he lived from his jump, survived the fall, the plummet to the water. And he famously said in interviews and speeches and so forth that if anyone had even like said one word to him, he wouldn't have jumped off the bridge. Like even
Hmm.
someone like said hi to him or
Hmm.
whatever. Those two things happened at the same time. The Davidowitz book and Kevin Hines, and a light bulb went off like, why don't I take these 8 years of Google Ads experience at that point and try to help people with ads instead of sell them garbage products and services and stuff they don't need? Could these ads be used to help individuals who are telling Google they're suicidal, as people do every day also? And could they be used to help people who tell Google they want to do a mass shooting? Unfortunately, as Americans tell Google they want to do a mass shooting every single day, that they want to shoot up their workplace or their job or kill the president or etc. I've seen it all. They do tell Google that every day, and I know that because I used to run ads to those folks, and I would run helplines to them. And no other advertiser in their right mind who is sane would do this. And I'm sorry to be crass, but there's no money in that.
Yeah.
You're not going to make money paying Google to serve an ad to try to help somebody who's going to shoot up their workplace or just maybe letting off steam in a very bizarre way and telling Google that. But so I spent the next years, starting in 2019, spent tens of thousands of dollars of my own money when I'm supposed to be buying a house to run ads to the suicidal, people telling Google they're going to do a mass shooting, people telling Google they want to buy heroin, leave silent Scientology, prisoners, migrants, people who want an exorcist, people in Antarctica, people, yeah, just every aspect of life that's um, in the shadows, in the dark, that needed a light or a microscope pointed at. And the microscope is Google Ads, underused for that purpose because most people think of ads as banners that contain sneakers that follow you around the internet, when really it's a direct line into Google's data servers, the most powerful data set ever amassed on humanity, according to Davidowitz, which I agree with. It's that direct line. Google
Mm.
Ads is the key and the siphon that goes into the only way to get it is that. And that's the hurdle with this work and why it's underutilized because as soon as people hear ads, they tune out and they think of like banners and annoying stuff.
Yeah.
It's really just the byproduct, the mechanism to learn about humanity.
Mm. Mm.
So, been
It
doing
speaks
that.
volumes about you that you took a tool used to scoop data to almost to manipulate and used it for good. So that's amazing, man.
Yeah, so I learned that it could be used for good, and it led to some really amazing studies. Worked with this entity called Black Dog Institute for years now, 5 years, 4 or 5 years. We've been doing studies, trying to learn more about suicidal searchers in Indonesia and Australia. We have three peer-reviewed papers. One was just published in the Lancet. I'm not in the academic world. I understand that's hard to do. So I'm happy that was published. And there really is, even with these papers, there is so little attention on the Google Ads
Mm.
capabilities and so much potential upside, so many data gaps that could be filled with this. It really bothers me that there's so little attention on this. So I'm trying to talk more about this side of things and the potential of its repurposing.
Hmm. Well, you've done an extraordinary white paper, and we will get to that. But when did the idea for Above Us occur to you?
Yes, so I've had an interest in sci-fi my whole life, starting with the seminal classic Fire in the Sky, which traumatized the whole generation, including myself. I was 8 years old, and there was this thing that used to go on at TV. It'd be like, now here's the 8 o'clock movie. And, it's usually like a family movie. So I was watching TV alone in my room, and here's the 8 o'clock movie, Fire in the Sky, brought to you by Tide. And, like, I was like, okay, what is this movie? I had been into like Star Wars a little bit at that point. I was a kid.
Hmm.
Fire in the Sky. What was so hmm, it brings you in. I'm really upset kind of that this was I want to find the intern that put this movie on and just like sue him or
Yeah.
we'll get a class action lawsuit because it's very misleading. The movie's
Yeah.
like an hour of like a courtroom drama kind of. It's not. I was like, okay, I'm like kind of watching it. And then just like the last 15 minutes when he has the flashback with the UFO, I can't overstate how intense that movie was and just like I remember that moment and it really scared me. It was the scariest movie I'd ever seen and movies just can't scare you like they did when you're a kid. So
Hmm.
that stuck with me forever, that movie. And I was terrified for so long from that experience. But then I got more into sci-fi, as I got into my teenage years and reading sci-fi. Um, and I was taking a drive with my wife one night, late at night, upstate New York, and I had been dabbling with this idea of, doing my experiments. I wanted something low stakes, and less intense than what I was working on. The work I was doing was so intense, buying ads and keywords related to suicide and harm reduction and mass shootings and stuff. I wanted something very low intensity that could be fun, that might be used as a proof of concept later down the line. So I had this idea kicking around in my head to like, could I buy keywords like I saw a UAP or I saw a UFO, report a UAP, report a UFO? Could what could you learn about people who are typing that in? The amazing thing about Google Ads data is it's immediate. You get the data in seconds,
Hmm.
which like compare that to the harm reduction space where epidemiologists are trying to solve the opioid epidemic in the US, especially. They rely on mortality data and
Yeah.
surveys, which are on a lag. It's ridiculously poor data on a year and a half lag. I don't know how helpful that could possibly be. Compare that to Google Ads. It's in seconds. You get that data. It's washed of all personal identifiers and so forth.
Hmm.
Anyway, I was wondering if we could do the same thing in the UFO and UAP space. Could we buy keywords related to this and find out where people are? and who they are who have UAP experiences. So I ran that and I'm paying for this myself, so I didn't know where it was going. I started this in the summer of 2023 actually, and I paused it because I'm like, I'm wasting money. I don't know where this is going. I don't know who cares about this. And then I was driving with my wife late one night, and there was this really mysterious giant, like orange red moon on the horizon, and we got this very mysterious feeling. Um, we got out of the car to look at it, and the moon, it sounds ridiculous, but
Not to
it was
me,
two,
but yeah.
2 in the morning, and the co wonder of the cosmos, and we got in this very deep conversation about our insignificance in the scheme of things, and we had this mysterious feeling. And then I got back at 3 in the morning, still a buzz with this feeling, and I started thinking about this idea again about that I had paused and done away with. Like, I should revisit that. That was a fun idea, you know? But if I want to do it, let's do it properly this time. And let's like output the data of people who search for UFOs, like make it presentable to a map out, like give people access to this. So I connected something called Google Looker Studio, which is a free tool that anyone can access for free. I connected that to Google Ads and it made a rudimentary map of, if people searched for I saw UAP, they'd show up on the map. Um, I didn't want to stop there, so I partnered with this company called Broken Reality, and they, with this pretty elaborate tech stack, turned that map into a very beautiful presentation at which you can access at aboveus.io. And even though this is a publicly available tool, it is a proof of concept because it's low stakes. If anyone's personal data passes through to me, or I make mistakes in the output data, there's nothing on the line like that of significance. If some guy sees a UAP in Kansas and I accidentally uh, had some privacy concerns with him, okay, he might be upset about that, but it's not like targeting an ad to someone who's suicidal and I'm
Yeah.
transposing their data, and I can't make any mistakes in doing something like this. And I can't do this without writing an ethics segment of a proposal and so forth. So even though this is a publicly available tool, it is a proof of concept, so I can make mistakes in a low stakes
Hmm.
area relative to other areas and make a proof of concept of impression broadcasting, as I call it, and give that proof of concept to which I'm working on now in the harm reduction opioid space. Take what Above Us is doing, and how could we use that in high stakes areas to try to save lives? So that's what it is also. So it's my interest of sci-fi, trying to help people who are investigating the UAP phenomenon, but also develop in real time and make mistakes and learn from it in a proof of concept. So
Mm.
here's just real quick a couple of things that I've learned and feedback I've gotten, and I wouldn't have learned otherwise without doing this. Um, the enormous importance of normalizing by population when you do something like this, because otherwise you make a population map,
Hmm.
normalizing by population, because we don't care that all these people in New York City saw a UAP. We care about little areas
Yeah.
anywhere where people see a high index of sightings relative to the population. That's super important. I learned the importance of doing this and how involved and a heavy lift it is, supposedly, in the text stack, which is not my area, of normalizing everything before the output. So if I ever did this in another area, that has to be done. And lastly, the importance of negative keywords in Google Ads. We don't want to output data of people typing in things like related to UAP news or books or cool movies or fire in the sky traumatized my whole family. We want because we don't want that output. We don't want people looking at a map and it's like, wow, there's a whole spate of
Yeah.
sightings, but it's really just a ton of people who are trying to sue the
Curious.
creators of
Yeah.
Fire in the Sky. So you don't want that. So that's something I learned doing this.
Hmm.
So at this moment, I'm just had a call today with someone in the harm reduction space. I'm really trying to explain the power of impression broadcasting and try to get funding unlocked in the harm reduction world.
Mm.
And above us is kind of this learning process.
Mm.
That's a fun project along the way. It's a lot of fun to make and see how these strange correlations with flaps. And there's been some data and learnings from this, even though it
Yeah, I
has.
love that term that you use, data flares. And I was going to
Yeah.
ask, I mean, are there any memorable ones that you've observed whilst you've been running it? Because you've had 23,500 impressions, haven't you?
Yeah. So even though the data is limited and it's hard to make concrete findings from this because the data is not normalized and because I'm paying for this myself and I don't have the budget. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on this already. The other feedback I get is, why don't you expand it to the whole world? Why the US? And why don't you expand this beyond the top 10,000 cities in the US, which I'm limited to? It's because that's just more money because
Cost. Yeah.
the way it works, people type in, I saw a UAP, the ad shows, whether they click it or not, their impression goes to the map through impression broadcasting. But they do click the ad once in a while. And then every time they do that, I have to pay Google $3. So you just graph that out. If I'm targeting the whole world, instead of spending $500 a month, it might be $2,500 a month,
Yeah.
you know? So
Mm.
that's why it is limited. But
Hmm.
there have been definitely correlations with the New Jersey drone
Oh,
uh,
that's interesting.
lab. Huge correlation, and it's weird because this launched properly in October 2024, and right a week
Mm.
later, this New Jersey drone thing happened. So there have never been um, the amount of impressions or searches since then. So that
Mm.
was a huge spike, and then things kind of have calmed down. What's almost just as interesting to me are the areas where there are historical sightings. I'm not a ufology expert by any means. My besides fire in the sky interest and understanding is like beginner to intermediate level.
Hmm.
That said, I know there are areas that not only have historical UAP significance, but recent sightings and spates of flaps and so forth. And those areas have no impressions, which I find
Ah.
very odd, which that was kind of telling. Because normalizing by population doesn't even impact that. If people are searching, or if they're
Hmm.
not, they're not. So in these areas, there's like five of them. One of them are the areas around Skinwalker Ranch.
Hmm.
There's some missile towns. I have a whole list that I don't have
Yeah.
handy right now, but there's all these areas that have frequent UAP sightings. That's known in the world of ufology, but over 19 months, not a single person searching. That is very bizarre.
Yeah,
So,
that's very interesting.
yeah, so doesn't really make a lot of sense because the ads are eligible to show, and Google just doesn't show them in these areas with high UAP activity. I'm not going to speculate on what that means or why, but um, I'm not even going to go there. Could Google be withholding the ad and not
Mm.
allowing data to be transposed to an ad runner in those sensitive areas? I don't know, but it's unusual. So I have found that. So
Mm.
lack of correlation to those areas, and definitely a correlation with flaps. So
Yeah. So
and
do
real
you
cool,
think
yeah.
that there would be the facility at least, and I'm not implying any form of conspiracy, but do you think that the technology would exist to intercept that even before it made it to, the process in which you would then see?
Mm, not so much that it's intercepted, but Google has this thing called sensitive events and topics. It's this ever evolving segment of keywords that are a no-no. You can't
Yeah.
you could buy them, but the ad just doesn't show. And then
Mm.
after a while, like having run these experiments since 2019, sometimes I try stuff and the ad gets slammed as sensitive events. This is like I did an experiment during COVID to try to buy keywords related to anosmia, which is the inability to smell. That was a leading indicator of COVID. The idea being to map out COVID instances in real time rather than on the week that was going on
Mhm.
at the time by buying the symptomatic keywords of anosmia. That Google allowed that for a while,
Mhm.
but when COVID became a pandemic, then you know, they don't want to be seen as profiting from COVID advertisements. That is a bad look for Google.
Mhm.
So they, at that point, labeled it a sensitive event. They shut down all my ads. And then that was it. The data shut off. That can happen at any time to any space. Like tomorrow, they could say, if disclosure moves ahead at the rapid clip that's being promised,
Mhm.
they might decide it's such a sensitive event. We don't want to be seen profiting from UAP stuff.
Mhm.
And they would shut all the ads down. When that happens, Above Us ceases to exist, and you
Yeah.
can't broadcast anything because the ads are the essential
Mm.
mechanism. That is one of the things that's precarious about this because it's at Google's whim what they decide is sensitive event or not. That's ever evolving. They could decide tomorrow everything in the harm reduction space related to opioid keywords is over, and then that's it. You can't do it anymore. But there's like these evergreen keywords that are always off limits.
Mm.
Um, the mass shooting keywords have were unusual because they never were deemed a sensitive event.
Mm.
Google was fine letting me advertise to people who wanted to do a mass shooting, which is
Mhm.
bizarre. And it's not like they don't know.
Yeah.
They know every little area that you can advertise in, and they allow it or they don't. So they allowed advertising to prospective mass shooters.
Mm.
But eventually, my ads shut off completely when I started talking about this and writing about this more frequently. I'm not saying there's a correlation, but I
Yeah.
noticed that because they did go into my account at one time and suspend everything
Right.
after I wrote about it. But curiously, in the mass shooting space, there was never anything deemed a sensitive event. The ads just shut off. That's
Mm.
a long way of coming back to your question there.
No, but it's
Uh,
it's
they
valuable. Yeah.
could it could be considered a sensitive area in certain high UAP cited areas. They just
Mm.
don't deem it a sensitive event, and I have no idea. And it looks like nobody's searching, but they really are.
Mhm.
And Google just won't let me shut the ad, show the ad, and
Mm.
that's my lifeline to the data. So
Well, they say on the
sure.
internet that nothing's ever really gone. So is there the ability to scrape back, to because presumably Google somewhere has got years and years and years of this data, which is only increasing exponentially. Is there any facility at any level, do you think, to let's say the disclosure topic becomes more relevant that somebody could go and look at the archive?
Hmm. There's something called Google Trends,
Hmm.
which is a publicly available tool for anyone. Uh, It's kind of like a light version of what I do with Above Us and this impression broadcasting in general. Google Trends have been around a long time.
Hmm.
Um, it's an extremely limited tool.
Hmm.
Like just yesterday, I just tried out. I typed in report a UAP. I saw a UFO in Google Trends. There's like no data. There's like data on a few states, as you can only get as granular as the state level. There's huge gaps in data. The impression volume is only relative. You can't see anyone's demographic or word for word query. It's almost useless. That
Hmm.
is one way to look back because Google Trends goes back to 2004, I believe. And you can look
Right.
back at relative volume of whatever's there back then. It's barely useful, but that is one tool. The other one is to rely on output data of a Google Ads account, which is the best way to access historical data of searchers in existence.
Hmm.
But you would need a tool like Above Us would have to have existed for a long time. Mine goes back 19 months
Hmm.
in data. Um, But that's it. There's no one offering anything like that. The publicly available tool, Google Trends, is a joke,
Hmm.
and there is no historical data. It's relying, third parties have to step up
Hmm.
to provide that to the public.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say then you find the pot of gold. There's no limitations on what you could do. What would you do with what you've learned? And I'm not necessarily applying that to the UAP field, you know.
Hmm. Could you rephrase that question?
Yeah, so let's say you got the ultimate backer to use this technology, you know, either in harm prevention or anything. How would you apply that funding, you know, if there were no breaks?
Yeah. In the opioid space, which is the best example because the gaps in data are so glaring, and they rely on the mortality data and hospital data and surveys. People lie on surveys, according to Davidowitz.
Hmm.
If I had unlimited funding, which is not on, I think at most, if you wanted to target the entire world and buy every keyword related to harm reduction, at most it would cost $200,000 a year,
Wow.
US. Which is sounds like a lot, but that's one third or of the price that an opioid user costs the US every year. Just one, like it's like $700,000.
Yeah.
The cost of one opioid user between their hospital visits and everything else. So the cost is relatively low. If a funder gave me that funding, I could target ads to the entire world, maximize impression share for every keyword related to it. Um, Pay for some of my time to do this manual work, which is not a joke. It's a lot of work to manually be on top of this to have the highest quality output data. That means ensuring 100% impression share that the keywords trigger an ad every time, being on top of the negative keywords every single day. Otherwise, the quality of the data erodes.
Hmm.
But with that kind of funding, there would be this Google Ads account that exists with historical data that could be output that folks in the harm reduction space can use and reference in real time and make use of it in real time rather than waiting a year and a half to make decisions when the damage has already been
Yeah.
uh, done on these areas where, the opioid stuff moves around so fast and areas pop up. What use is knowing about that a year and a half after the fact? The damage is already done
Yeah.
and it's a waste. So, I do understand the drawbacks of this data, and I wanted to mention this. Like at running these experiments since 2019, I'm well aware that they can be abused by bad actors to do great harm to searchers. And that's been a very disturbing aspect of doing this. For example, um, if an entity came along and accessed this data and saw where emerging hotspots in opioid use were, rather than
Yeah.
providing, safe injection sites or fentanyl education or Narcan distro, they could like police those areas and get those people incarcerated. They'd be like, oh,
Mm.
there's like a huge 10x index in this random town of a huge explosion of opioid and fentanyl use.
Hmm.
Let's go there. Um, so there's a lot of ethical hurdles to this, I understand, which
Hmm.
I'm poised to answer in whatever grant documentation or white paper needs to be provided for this because we can work around it. And we can work around it because there is something that existed in the past that is a lesson for this. It's called Google Flu. This took place in the late 2000s. It's probably the most famous example of OSINT or open source intelligence using Google Ads, like the stuff I do. It was famous because it worked and then it's failed spectacularly. So Google Flu was Google's own platform to provide epidemiologist data on flu trends. So people would type in symptoms related to the flu, and then that data would be broadcast to try to help people to solve the flu ahead of
Hmm.
in real time. For
Mm.
2 years, this worked, and it was incredible. And then it started to get all weird and meta, where the data started to like eat itself because people would type in things and autocomplete would finish their
Oh.
symptoms, like they had the flu when they didn't. And then people would hear about it in the news, and then they would type in flu-related stuff when they didn't have the flu, and that would created this giant feedback loop, and then it all
Mm.
fell off the rails, and the data signal blew out. And Google ended up creating the data signal they were trying to track, you know? So we can learn from all that when we do
Hmm.
this again.
Yeah.
To avoid this, because with negative keyword work and due diligence and manual work in the account, we could prevent these searchers triggering ads that should not be in the data, which I'm assuming in Google Flu Trends, there was no such Google Ads account that provided data. They were just outputting like whatever their keyword, their internal data, not
Hmm.
using ads. Anyway, we can learn from all that and not make the same mistakes, just as we can learn from above us and not make some of the mistakes I've made there to in a
Hmm.
2.0 version in other areas that we can apply.
That's fantastic. Well, your white paper is fantastic, and I'm going to put a link to it
So,
to the bottom. It really does
thank you.
demonstrate a huge untapped resource for people out there. Where's the best place for people to get in touch with you if they're curious about this or the application of your technology?
Yeah. So my Instagram is pat.berlinquette, and making up for lost time, I should have started this a long time ago, but I started it in October. Um, one of the hurdles with this work is it's hard to explain. And when people hear ads, sometimes they tune out and they think of like annoying banners because they spoke about something near their phone and now they're seeing ads for it. And they're like, I hear ads and I just tune out. So I'm trying to explain this in a really stripped down way. And I use Instagram for that and short
Mhm.
reels to explain these arcane topics. So I would start there on Instagram, and then my Substack, which is berlinquette.substack.com, where
Mhm.
I'm just started that again, making up for lost time. Like, I've had this for a few years, but really trying to post consistently on there, starting this month to like really write about these topics, break them down very simply in easy to digest format, and explain things and make you know use cases for impression broadcasting and other repurposes of ad tech tools. So that's
Mhm.
berlincat.substack.com, and I will be more active there with more deeper dives into this area.
I've got to say as well as all the good work, your Instagram is so entertaining. I love that
Oh,
tagline of
thanks a
"Make all
lot.
well fiction again." It's
Yeah, I'm
one
trying
of the
to
highlights of my coffee day
I
when I'm
try
when I'm
to
scrolling through.
I'm trying to, I've been thinking about this and thinking and writing about it on my own for years. So I'm so in it, it's hard to like see it from the outside.
Yeah.
Um, but these videos are just easy and fun to make, and I try to like bring some levity to it because it's such a intense topic. It's a confusing topic. Um, and if it's in the wrong hands, it can be so dry it can repel everyone in a 10-mile radius. Um, so I try to demystify it. Yeah, still I have friends who like think I'm a hacker of some sort who just like don't understand what I'm doing. So if there's ever something like in the news, like Julian Assange, they'll send me stuff. Dude, you hear about this like
Yeah.
data breach, and they think I'm a hacker or something, and I'm like, guys, it's you can't even explain it anymore. You just gotta when people ask what I do, I just like 10 seconds. I used to be a commercial marketer with Google Ads. Now I use these tools for OSINT, repurposing them to help them. And then they're like,
Uh-huh.
what's OSINT? Then you say open source intelligence. Then they think you work for the CIA.
Yeah.
They freak out, and it's just not even worth explaining. All right, Tom. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you so much for this conversation, and I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. I'm
no
happy
worries,
to
man. You're doing a
talk about it.
great job. Like I said, I mean, there's not many people that would take the knowledge of that machine, the greatest, the biggest machine that humans have probably ever built, and then use it for good. So, anything, the tiniest thing that I can ever do to be of service to that, then hell,
I
I'm
really
I'm in.
appreciate it. I really appreciate it. It's going to be an interesting ride how this plays out with, as Google eventually succumbs to AI chatbots
Hmm.
and where all this data is going to go as marketers become the new intermediaries between AI and AI users,
Hmm.
which is a whole other conversation. It's
Yeah.
not going to end. It's just going to get a lot weirder.